Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO as we broadcast from the Culligan Water Studios, Better Water, Pure and Simple. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter, Chad Hasty Radio. Joining me right now on the phones, we'll get right to it as it is a very busy news day on a very busy news week. And U.S. Senator John Cornyn joining the Chad Hasty Show right now. Senator, welcome back to the show. Thank you for calling in today.
It's great to be with you, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you taking some time on, obviously it's a busy day. You have a lot going on. The Senate has a lot going on. And let's just jump into health care. The last time you appeared here on the show, making national news by talking about how you believed that the Senate would pass a repeal and replace plan by the end of July. We're not at the end yet, but we're getting close to the end of July.
Well, we still have time for me to meet my prediction, and I think what you'll see tonight, Chad, into the wee hours of the morning, we will have something called the vote-a-rama, which means that every senator who has an amendment who wants a vote on that amendment can get it, including Democrats. But so far, our Democratic colleagues have just tried to blow up this process rather than be constructive. But in the end, I believe we will have made great strides toward our goal of repealing and replacing Obamacare. It may be that we'll have to work with our House colleagues who've already passed their bill to reconcile the differences, but I'm more confident than ever that we'll get there.
Well, let me first go to the Democrats. I saw a tweet yesterday, and you know, as everything works in 2017, everything's based off of Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I saw a tweet yesterday that Democrats have not offered any amendments, and that they don't plan on offering any amendments. Is that true?
Well, I believe that is not strictly speaking true. I don't believe they'll offer any constructive amendments. What they would like to do is try to blow up the process that we're using under the Budget Act that lets us pass a bill with 51 votes. What they're trying to do in the vernacular of the Senate is to destroy the privileged status of the bill and force 60 votes, which they know we don't have. So for all practical purposes, they are being an impediment, an obstacle, and certainly not offering anything constructive to help us.
Yesterday, there was a vote on a clean repeal, and 7 Republican senators voted against a clean repeal. 6 of those senators had voted for a clean repeal in previous years when, under the former administration, when they knew it was going to be vetoed. Were you disappointed in yesterday's vote? Were you surprised? And for the average American voter and the average Republican voter who heard for 7 years we want to repeal Obamacare, and they saw these senators vote to repeal in the past, what does it say to those voters when, you know, from all the language I've seen, people feel as though they've been lied to, Senator?
Well, I certainly voted to repeal Obamacare, consistent with my vote in 2015. Senator Cruz and I both did. But there were some who changed their vote. I can only speculate that they feel like they've now come up with something better than what they voted on in 2015. But I'll leave it to the others to explain that. I couldn't explain that myself, and so that's why I voted consistently with my vote in 2015 to repeal and replace Obamacare completely.
And we're visiting with U.S. Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show. One of the, I guess, new plans, it seems like there's a new plan every day or every other day, is the so-called skinny repeal, which would, if I'm correct on this so far, from what we've seen at least reported, it would repeal the individual and employer mandates, and it would also repeal the medical device tax. In your opinion, is that a good enough repeal and replace plan?
Well, I believe what I call that is the free-to-choose option. The most unpopular part of Obamacare is the individual and employer mandate. The individual mandate, which in Texas fines people under roughly 450,000 Texans who make less than $25,000 a year, have chosen not to buy the insurance because they can't afford it, but simply to pay the penalty. I just think in a country that where freedom to choose is our ideal and really is speaks to who we are as a country, the idea of government forcing you to buy a product or fining you if you don't is just wrong. So we're going to repeal it, and I would say that this is a step toward a moving to the House to work to reconcile the differences between the Senate bill and the House bill so we can do a whole lot more. But I think if you had to choose one thing that was supporting Obamacare as it exists, without which it can no longer exist, it would be to repeal the individual mandate and the employer mandate, and that's what this free-to-choose option amendment would do. We still have some work to do to discuss this among my colleagues, but that seems to be the way we're heading right now.
As of this morning, are the votes there? I mean, I know it's a delicate process, and the CBO, of course, they came out this morning and said, well, if you pass that, 16 million more people will be without insurance. Of course, they don't tell us how many people would opt out of having insurance, but that's what scares a lot of your colleagues, isn't it? That millions more folks will not have insurance. It seems to scare a lot of your colleagues.
Well, what we that's only half of the story, as you indicate, and I don't believe CBO is correct. In any event, the fact that people may choose to exercise their freedom not to buy a government product because they can't afford it is not the solution. The solution is let's get the free market working again. Senator Cruz has a very good amendment which would give insurance companies the option to sell lower-cost insurance to create a market place where ultimately insurance companies can once again offer the public products they want at a price they can afford. To me, that's the ultimate solution, and in working through this in the Senate and along with our colleagues in the House, that's the goal we hope to achieve.
So your hope is to get rid of the individual mandate, which, hey, I'm all for. Let's get rid of the individual and employer mandate, and then to work in Senator Cruz's amendment, which says insurance companies can sell another catastrophic plan if they want to, as long as they have a plan that qualifies under the Affordable Care Act?
That's basically it.
Okay.
Ultimately, though, what we're trying to do is, given the constraints of this budget, this technical process that we're working under with no Democratic support, we are doing as much as we can do now, and we're going to keep working on this. Ultimately, Chad, I hope that health care is no longer a pure party exercise, but Obamacare started that when Democrats jammed it through with 60 votes in 2009 and 2010, and when they had the majority in both houses in the White House. So with the thin majority we have in the Senate, and given the fact that Democrats are not helping at all, in spite of the fact that many of their constituents are hurting too from the meltdown of Obamacare, this is the next step in the process. But believe me, we're going to continue to keep working to provide affordable health care to the American people that lets them choose, not the government.
Senator, a couple more questions for you, and one more on health care, and that is this. How optimistic are you compared to maybe a few weeks ago, maybe earlier this month? How optimistic are you that a repeal and replace will happen?
I'm quite optimistic, Chad.
Okay.
My job, in addition to representing Texans, is to be the whip, which is the vote counter in the Senate. So I, along with others on my whip team, have been spending a lot of time working with all of my colleagues on the Republican side, trying to find a way to get everybody on the same page to yes. As you point out, conservatives and Republicans and people who believe in free markets tend to be policy entrepreneurs, and it seems like every day somebody comes up with a different idea. But now we have to coalesce behind a single approach in order to keep the promises that we've been making in the past elections, at least the last three elections, to repeal and replace Obamacare. So tonight and maybe in the early hours of Friday morning, we will do that here in the Senate, and then we'll work with our House to finish the job in the coming weeks.
Senator, the president has been very public in his, how should I say this, dissatisfaction maybe with the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. I heard a sound clip yesterday where you said the two men should meet and clear the air and put this behind them. In your opinion, is the president in any trouble of losing support of Republican senators and maybe Republicans just overall throughout Congress? And is this hurting the fight to repeal and replace Obamacare?
Well, I know Jeff Sessions well, having served with him here in the Senate, and he's an honorable man, and I believe there's nobody who's been more loyal to President Trump than Jeff Sessions, who was the first to endorse him in the Senate. I know they have a disagreement over this recusal issue over the Russian investigation, but the Department of Justice regulations are clear that having been a principal in the campaign, that the Attorney General should not participate in an investigation of that same subject matter. So Jeff Sessions did the honorable and right thing. I know it's a frustration to the president, but I think ultimately what they need to do is to get on and work on the rest of President Trump's agenda. And I think were Jeff Sessions to be removed or stepped down, I think that would be a huge obstacle to the president completing his agenda, which we'd all like to see him successful at.
Is the president in trouble of losing support in the Senate?
I don't think so. I mean, I think what people would like to do is to help the president get back on track, and let's complete his agenda. We're anxious to do that because we think it's not only good for his administration, but it's good for the country.
I know you're busy. One last question. The president tweeted out yesterday about reinstating a ban on transgender troops, those serving in the military and also receiving gender reassignment surgery through the military. What are your thoughts on that? I know there's been some pushback, both on the left and right.
Well, I believe the military exists for the purpose of fighting and winning our nation's wars. And there are those who would like to use the military as a place to experiment or to try different ideas out, including ones like this. But what I always do is rely upon the experts, and I'm confident that that's what the president has done, is to ask General Mattis at the Department of Defense, a highly decorated Marine retired general who everybody respects, for his recommendation. And I'm sure that what the president has done is taken his recommendation, and I believe that that's the correct course of action.
Senator, as always, I appreciate your time and you giving us a call today and updating everybody as to what's happening in Washington, D.C. It's always calm, I know, in Washington, so I appreciate your time.
Great to be with you, Chad. Thanks a lot.
That's U.S. Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM, KFYO.